There's a philosophical question here, which is, what kind of company are you and how are you going to contribute to the future of the internet? Are you going to enable or are you going to try to control and wall it off?
Hi everyone, it's Wednesday, July 21st. Thanks for listening to the Behind the Numbers ad platform, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. I'm your host, Principal Analyst Nicole Perrin, and this is my platform to talk about advertising with some of the smartest and most interesting people I know. Joining me to do that today is Jed Dederick, who is Senior Vice President, Global Client and Agency Development at The Trade Desk. Hi, Jed. How's it going?
Hey, Nicole. I'm great. It's so good to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show. We like to set up the show with a little bit of background on our guests and on the company that they work for, which might feel a little silly with The Trade Desk. But tell us a little bit more about The Trade Desk to kick us off. What kinds of companies are your clients, and what is the main problem that you're trying to help them solve?
So our clients are the biggest advertisers in the world. That's both brands and agencies. So we're a technology platform. So demand side platform, DSP, are some of the many acronyms that we use. And we basically use data and our tech to help advertisers and agencies effectively reach their audiences across channels, across regions, across platforms and devices. We're a global company and we work across all of these connected channels. We operate a measurement marketplace that allows marketers to measure efficacy of ad campaigns against real business results. So we'll talk a lot more about that, I'm sure. But one notable thing that we've just done is we launched Solimar, which is the biggest product launch in our history. And it's really a new upgraded platform based on more than 2 years of engineering and product work. And Solimar is there to try to meet this specific moment for the open internet and for marketers, addressing a bunch of key concerns of this moment. Things like privacy and secure data onboarding of first-party data, the need to connect marketing to real business growth goals via measurement marketplace, increasingly cross-channel executions with the fastest growing and arguably most important platform in connected television, and then this rising focus on digital identity, where we'll talk, I'm sure, about Unified ID 2.0, which has been integrated in a new and important way. And all of that sort of packaged in this new user experience, which puts goals and first-party data at the forefront of campaign setup. So I'm excited about some of the upgrades we've made recently, but yeah, hopefully that gives you some background on who we are.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about like a whole bunch of what you just mentioned in the main part of the show. But first, let's talk a little bit about you personally. Before the show, I shared with you eMarketer's latest estimates of average daily media consumption among U.S. adults. So we want to know, where do you fit in? Or I guess I should say, where do you not fit in? Can you share with listeners some media channel where you're an outlier, either because you consume more or less than the daily average?
Yeah, definitely. I guess some of the averages in your research were relief and others were a little alarming. So
I feel like that's like a universal experience of seeing these numbers, like combination of like horror and make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, totally. You're like, you got to watch more TV than that. Come on. No, I think that my main outlier is Spotify. I'm a music person. Just what Spotify and the internet have brought to music has been just a revelation. And I was a music major in college. I now have 2 kids who I'm introducing to music and working on their taste with them.
That's so much fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. Streaming music is one of my favorite things about the new world and the internet that we have now.
That's fun. I think you may be the first person who's mentioned streaming music stuck out to you. Our estimate is really quite small, just an average of 13 minutes of time with Spotify, but that is related to the fact that it's sort of averaged out across the whole population. And although Spotify is the leading streaming music platform, it's still, pretty far from penetrating, quite the majority of the US market. So it makes sense that the average would be a little bit low. I also, I love listening to music. I spend a lot of time, way more than 13 minutes a day doing it, but not on Spotify. So I'm bringing that average down, Jed.
Okay. I'm rocking it right back up. I'm like 4x probably the average. So don't worry, I got us.
Nice. Cool. So let's talk about some of what you've been up to over the past 18 months or so. Back in early 2020, I had another guest on this show from the trade desk, Tim Sims. And I'd love to start off by talking about some of the things that you've learned at the trade desk since that time. It was actually pre-pandemic, so I imagine you've learned a lot because there's been a whole bunch going on, both out in the world outside and also within our industry since that time. So what kind of stands out to you over the past 12 to 18 months as important learnings at the trade desk?
First, it has to be acknowledged how hard it's been for everybody. Everywhere, and in our little corner of the world, we see how challenging it's been for marketers. But a lot of the pressures of the last 12 to 18 months, I think, have opened up a lot of possibilities, for marketers and the way they look at the open internet as a channel for economic growth and recovery, and also obviously a channel for fueling their growth and their success. Of course, the pause that we all experienced reinforced the importance of flexibility in marketing and agility. I think no one's planning cycles will ever be the same. And the importance of channels like programmatic advertising and DSPs like the trade desk, I think, only grew. And of course, the other big thing that happened was everyone is at home and there's, a pause in live sports. And everyone's experiencing new economic pressures, and the confluence of those events created the acceleration of streaming and streamed content. Principally we talk about CTV here and the way that people's cord cutting tripled and quadrupled. Basically, the way people consume media got more and more digital. Where we'd been making investments in connected television and streaming audio, and of course, sort of premium display and mobile advertising since the inception of the company, and thinking, hey, in a couple of years' time, everyone will shift here. That thinking was really accelerated, and those early bets and those early investments were all the more important. And so, yeah, I mean, if anything else, it's we've doubled down on those investments. We've seen marketers have to really prove under a microscope the value of every dollar spent. Delivering ROI. I think the pressure from the CFO office has never been greater. And that's really good for data-driven, measurable advertising, right? We have the opportunity to prove and to talk about deriving insights and connect ad spend to business outcomes in a way that hasn't been possible in a lot of the traditional forms of advertising. A lot of those things were our early hypothesis and our bets on the future. And if anything, 2020, painfully, in some ways uncomfortably, in a way that opened up a lot of possibilities. I think it's bringing us there faster.
You mentioned flexibility, and we saw so much research over the course of sort of that whole pandemic period emphasizing how important flexibility was to advertisers. And like you said, massive benefit to digital channels, which are way more liquid. It's huge benefits for a channel like programmatic, where the money's not spent until the impression is actually served. You can move money around, shift your campaigns around, be super nimble. Like your example, live sports goes away. What are you going to do? You can redirect those funds much more easily in digital than with, linear TV, for example. So that's helped, as you mentioned, attract more spending to CTV. And you also, mentioned this pressure from the C-suite, from CFOs. And I do remember research that you at the trade desk put out at the end of last year that showed people said they've never been under so much pressure, including to prove things that they just never really had to prove before that they were working, which I thought that was really interesting. And I've mentioned that data point in a whole bunch of presentations that I've given over the past 8 months or so. Let's talk about a couple of the areas. You mentioned one of them, but I want to talk about a couple areas that we at eMarketer see as being some of the fastest growing digital ad channels this year. So let's talk first about the one that you mentioned, which is CTV. So what can you share with listeners about what advertisers are looking for when it comes to CTV as we head now into the back half of 2021? Aside, obviously, from the flexibility that we were just chatting about.
Sure. The really macro point to start with is, and this is something eMarketer has reported on and done a great job capturing, is the acceleration of cord cutting, the acceleration of consumption has just meant that eyeballs are meaningfully moved. And so reach, the concept of reach is forever changed and not going back. And so the very important sort of problem statement is the eyeballs aren't where they used to be. In order to achieve reach and speak with key demographics, you can no longer think of connected television as an add-on or an afterthought. It's a central component of reaching the audiences that you need to speak to. And since TV has been, for many marketers, the biggest segment of their campaign budget and has pretty much always been considered the most effective form of advertising, the magnitude of that change and all of the implications and the change required to processes and the breaking down of silos, and also the opportunity to do it better by breaking those silos down, the opportunities become holistic frequency capping, eliminating this problem of excess frequency that creates a lot of negative brand sentiment.
Like the number one problem that everyone mentions when they start talking about CTV ads still at this late date is frequency, over frequency.
Yeah, totally. And my central rationale, and I feel like I explained this to my mom and my
totally
everybody who complains and is like, aren't you working on that? And I'm like, here's the problem. The problem is it's being bought in silos and via insertion order. The thing that we are doing and the big advertisers that we work with are doing is breaking those silos down, along with rethinking their linear television strategy, also rethinking how they execute digital premium video streamed television in a way that's not siloed, so that they have the ability to control reach and frequency, to optimize to frequency, so that you don't have that issue. And in many ways, replicating a lot of the problems of the past of digital, which were silos. And so, that's where we see in this world and in the world of television, one of the best examples of the value proposition for the open internet, where there are no monopolies in television. Jeff has talked about Netflix doing an amazing job, but only capturing 11%-ish of screen time. That's an example of how there are so many pieces, there's so much fragmentation in television. Basically, the importance of tying it all together is huge, and it's only getting greater as fragmentation increases and as this universe of premium content, the golden age of television, I would argue, gets better.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Anything else that you would call out that advertisers are really looking for from CTV ads at this point? Anything as far as like what kind of goals they have? I'm curious about that.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Oh, nice.
I mean, that's and it sounds like we're hearing the same stuff. We talked about the importance of being measurable, of being data driven, being able to tie television advertising. And we talked about the most effective advertising in history, right? So this amazing platform of sight, sound, and motion combined with better targeting and reach management. How do we know that it's working? We're going to talk more, I'm sure, about the measurement marketplace that includes new entrants like Walmart, Home Depot, the retail data, not just retail, but offline data that's coming into the measurement marketplace means that we can now tie TV advertising alongside the other channels that are being bought, which are sort of more traditional digital channels, to those outcomes, to get a real sense of attribution, to get a real sense of optimal channel mix, and to see what it means to combine channels in terms of driving those outcomes. And so we've got a lot of case studies on the impact of doing that. But a long way of saying we're making TV more measurable and combining it with the other channels that are being bought in this increasingly streamed world just means that marketers have a better ability to optimize and drive results.
Yeah, which is obviously, really compelling for them. And we are going to talk just in a minute about that measurement marketplace and also more about identity. But first, I just got a quick word from our sponsor, VTEX. Retail's next competitive threat may come from a business model or channel that didn't even exist a few months ago. This modern dynamic requires companies to adapt quickly, pivoting business seemingly overnight, something traditional commerce platforms just can't support. There's a new enterprise commerce platform on the rise, one that's fast, flexible, and doesn't require 9 months and $1 million to get up and running. Go to VTEX, that's VTEX.com/eMarketer to learn more. Back with Jed, and as promised, let's talk a little bit about that measurement marketplace. But I want to also just mention, retail media specifically, another one of these ultra fast growing digital channels. And these retail media platforms have become more important over the past few years, but especially so since the pandemic, which really just supercharged the share of retail transactions that were occurring online, or at least converting online as opposed to in store. So what can advertisers get out of using more shopper data to help inform their digital media buying?
For those who sell products in these retailers, the opportunity to optimize and derive insights is better than it's ever been, and it's growing exponentially. Shopper data, I think, has traditionally been available, in pretty limited ways. So you've had to go and there's a small number of retail data co-ops or a couple retailers who operate sort of mostly IO-based managed service where, they control yield and how things are packaged. But what has started to happen has been those retailers are opening up to things like the Trade Desk's measurement marketplace and putting that data in the hands of advertisers and their agencies for more agility, more flexibility, more transparency, combining that with things like connected television that we talked about a moment ago. And that hasn't happened ever, really. I mean, tying this data for targeting, so who's buying your products in Walmart, to measurement, to how many products did we sell that were sort of touched and driven by our TV campaigns. I mean, that is brand new. And the amazing thing is how many retailers are leaning in. I think that, many have seen the success of the Amazon ad business.
Yep.
And frankly, I think Jeff talks about Walmart having this institutional epiphany in creating their partnership with the Trade Desk that I've been really fortunate to be very close to. And, one of the huge advantages that they've created is they're not starting over building a DSP the way Amazon did, right? They're also not going to do what many of the telcos did and buy a DSP and totally obliterate their objectivity and create a new walled garden. The importance of Walmart not creating a walled garden to the future of retail media, to the future of the open internet, it just can't be overstated. And so what we get now with the combination of all of the Trade Desk's best capabilities and Walmart data, and it's not just Walmart, right? Jeff made an announcement recently of adding Home Depot, and this isn't just a North American conversation. We've had entrants from Asia and Europe, like Gojek, and many others. This measurement marketplace is one of the most important arguments for the open internet and for executing outside of the walled gardens, frankly, because one of the problems that our clients have with the walled gardens is their insistence on grading their own homework. And so as this big marketplace of premium data becomes available for both targeting and measurement, the case is the best it's ever been.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned Walmart, and I love the way that you characterize it as their institutional epiphany. I think we've also really kind of had that viewpoint of a lot of what's been going on at Walmart with their ads business under Lex Josephs, who Eric Hagstrom and I talked to just recently about like a whole bunch of what you just mentioned, and she really shared a similar perspective that we thought was really interesting. They invested so much in their retail media business, grew it super fast last year, and we have like a really, really positive outlook on how Walmart has, pivoted to just really make a lot out of that business since they took it in-house. We think it's really interesting.
I couldn't agree more, and I think the impact that they're going to have on the rest of the world, of everyone, every retailer and everyone who sells in retailers, just is massive. So it's exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. My last question for you, I can't not ask you about the future of identity resolution, which of course is like at the backbone, I assume, of all of that measurement marketplace stuff that you were just talking about too.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. So, we have a bit of a delay on our journey toward the cookieless future after Google postponed the Chrome cookie deprecation as of June. But it's obviously still incredibly important for advertisers to be preparing for what's coming next. So what should they be thinking about and doing now and over the next 18 months?
It is a really amazing and important time to defining the future of, the internet, the whole internet, and how we do the value exchange of the open internet, which is really free content in return for relevant advertising. That's up to us. That's up to how we execute as an industry right now. And so, while I totally agree and understand that many are relieved at not having the pressures of cookie deprecation from Chrome so quickly, we can't take our eye off the ball. And also we can't ignore the opportunity that we have to make this thing so much better. The importance of the initiative that the Trade Desk has, launched, but really has become so much bigger than the Trade Desk of Unified ID 2.0 isn't just about upgrading cookies, right? It's not a reaction to those announcements from Google and from walled gardens. This is an opportunity to really make this thing better. This is an opportunity to capitalize on creating that common currency for the open internet, which improves the experience for advertisers, for publishers, and for consumers. It's integral that we get this conversation right with consumers. We as an industry have not done a good job explaining the value exchange of the open internet to consumers. And you couple that with many of the breaches of trust, which have really come from the walled gardens, to be honest. And you have this moment where big tech is under massive scrutiny. And I think, look no further than that scrutiny for the rationale for what the decisions Google has recently made. But in that context, getting the conversation right with consumers about this just has never been more important. And so I think, Unified ID 2.0, the future of privacy, is integral to everything we're doing and we're building. This is a topic that we take extremely, extremely seriously because we have the opportunity with the open internet to do it better than it's ever been done and to rise all boats. And, there's a philosophical question here, which is, what kind of company are you and how are you going to contribute to the future of the internet? Are you going to enable or are you going to try to control and wall it off? And we just fundamentally believe that you have to look at this more like government, where, we really believe in democratizing the internet and allowing for a competitive, thriving marketplace and not trying to wall it off. And that's why Unified ID 2.0, the fundamental concept of interoperability is there. How we all treat that, I think we had Joy Robbins at our Solimar launch, and she characterized this just fantastically, which is, essentially saying urging the publishers in the world to not become complacent because of the delay from Google, but to act now and to really think about how we get this right and make it better than it's ever been. And as one of the early adopters of the massive movement of Unified ID 2.0, talked about that as a fundamental component to what a better internet looks like in the future.
Not an extra 2 years to sit on your hands, but an extra 2 years to be thoughtful and strategic and test some new alternatives like UID 2.0 perhaps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody talks a lot about the importance of first-party data. Couldn't agree more. That's real. Building those assets and leveraging those assets, looking at the open internet as a means for leveraging that asset in the best way you can. Not, thinking that the internet will ever be controlled by one party. Because I think if history has taught us anything, it's that the internet is bigger than any one company. And so I guess a way to sum that up is to say that we think that open is better and that we can get that right, and that'll lead to a better internet for consumers. It'll lead to a better internet for publishers. I want to also just connect this to something that's really personal. And it kind of goes back to when you were asking me about my own media consumption.
Yeah.
And I talked about music, and I've heard others talk about this in the realm of journalism in today's current climate. How we fund and monetize that content is really a serious thing. We have a tendency in marketing, I think, to talk about this as trends and the craziness and the moving targets. But right now, there's a lot of pressure on the supply chain behind premium content. And that's true of music, that's true of television and video, that's true of journalism. Basically, getting that right with the open internet is, I think, the path to continuing to fund these amazing opportunities that we have with music, to listen to anything you want for $10 a month and some advertising, or for free and some advertising, or continuing to get the best content from streaming and television that we've ever had, or just the free press that everything from the Washington Post to the local publications that hold our institutions accountable. Fundamentally, funding that with relevant advertising with decent CPMs is a really serious thing for our society. And so that's why, the open internet and the tools that empower the open internet, like Unified ID 2.0, they're a lot bigger than the trade desk. They're a lot bigger than anything I can talk about within advertising. They're fundamental, I think, to our future, honestly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's impossible to overstate how much those economic incentives do end up influencing all of the content and media that people are able to consume, because, it's either out there or it's not. In large part because of those incentives. So I think that's a great place to end our conversation on. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have on today's episode of the Behind the Numbers ad platform, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. Jed, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me about all of these super interesting digital ad trends today.
It's always so fun and enlightening to talk to you, Nicole. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for listening. I'll be back next week with the next episode of the ad platform. And I'll give you a little preview. I'll be talking to Field Garthwaite of Iris TV. And he's also going to be talking a bunch about these same incentives and how important it is to fund really high quality media and journalism. And in the meantime, please continue to let us know what you think at podcast@emarketer.com. Thanks.